2 years had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council. The Great Council chamber, once filled with representatives from 47 species, now stood mostly empty. Only a handful of ambassadors remained, and they looked defeated. High Arbiter Zixthor sat alone in his chair, staring at the empty seats around him. The Galactic Council, an alliance that had stood for centuries, no longer existed in any meaningful way. The Krellnoth had taken a third of Council space. Member species, seeing that the Council could not protect them, had either made their own peace deals with the enemy or withdrawn into their own territories to fend for themselves. The Grand Alliance was dead. Zixthor's personal communicator beeped. With a heavy heart he answered it. The face that appeared was human. Admiral Andrew Hayes looked at him with an expression that held no anger, no hatred, just a kind of tired certainty, like someone watching events they had predicted come true. "Admiral Hayes," Zixthor said quietly, "have you come to mock us?" "No, High Arbiter," Andrew replied. "I have come to offer terms." Zixthor's eyes narrowed. "Terms for what?"
"Survival," Andrew said simply.
"The Krellnoth are 3 systems away from your homeworld. Your fleets cannot stop them. You know this. But our fleets can." Zixthor felt hope and dread mixing inside him. "At what price?" Andrew's expression did not change. "Humanity will defend Council species against external threats. We will protect you from the Krellnoth and any other enemy. In return, you will recognize human sovereignty over all systems we have claimed in the past 2 years. You will grant us permanent leadership positions on a reformed council, and you will never ever try to limit human military capability again." It was conquest, Zixthor realized, but conquest dressed up in the language of protection. The humans had learned well from watching the council operate all these years. "And if we refuse your terms, then we wish you the best of luck with the Krellnoth," Andrew said calmly. "We have our own people to protect. We have our own interests to serve. Whether you survive or not is no longer our concern." Zixthor looked around the empty chamber. He thought of his homeworld, where his people huddled in shelters while enemy ships grew closer every day. He thought of all the species that had trusted the Council to protect them, only to be abandoned when the Council proved too weak. "I accept," he said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "Good," Andrew replied. "We will have ships in your space within a week. Expect the Krellnoth to retreat shortly after. They are not foolish enough to fight humanity." Andrew paused, and for a moment something like sadness crossed his face. "High Arbiter, I want you to understand something. We did not want this. We would have been happy to serve alongside you as equals. We would have fought and died for the Council, asking nothing more than respect. But you made us into something else. You forced us to choose between being victims and being victors." The transmission ended, leaving Zixthor alone with his thoughts and his shame. 1 month later, human fleets had pushed the Krellnoth back beyond the old Council borders. The defense had been quick, almost casual. It became clear to everyone watching that humanity had been holding back during all their years of Council service. They were far more powerful than anyone had realized. The Krellnoth, seeing they were outmatched, retreated to their own space and sued for peace. Humanity granted it, with terms that heavily favored human interests. Nobody was surprised. On Earth, President Helen Carter prepared to address both her people and the galaxy beyond. The speech would be broadcast to hundreds of worlds, marking a new era in galactic history. She stood in front of the cameras, her posture straight and her voice firm. "For 30 years, she began, humanity sought to be good galactic citizens. We followed rules written by others. We limited ourselves to make others comfortable. We fought wars that were not ours and died for species that ultimately feared us more than they valued us." She paused, letting her words sink in across the galaxy. "That era is over. Humanity will chart its own course now. We will defend those who deserve defense. We will explore where we choose to explore. We will expand as we see fit. We will no longer ask permission to be what we are." She looked directly into the camera, as if making eye contact with every being watching. "But let it be known across the stars, we are not your enemies unless you make us so. We are not your masters unless you force us to be. We simply refuse to be your victims any longer. We will not be limited. We will not be controlled. We will not be cast aside when we become inconvenient. To those who want peace with humanity, we offer partnership on equal terms. To those who want trade, we offer fair exchange. To those who want our protection, we offer it freely, but never again will we give it to those who do not value it." The speech ended. Across the galaxy, billions watched and understood. The balance of power had shifted. Humanity was no longer the newcomer species trying to fit in. They were the dominant force, whether anyone liked it or not. In the rebuilt council chamber, now with significant changes, Ambassador Daniel Price took his seat. The chamber looked different now. The central position, once held by the High Arbiter, was now reserved for the human representative. Other species sat in a semicircle around this central seat, a clear visual reminder of the new order. The first session of the Reformed Council was about to begin. Representatives from 23 species were present. Some were species that had always been part of the Council. Others were newer, species that had sought human protection during the crisis. After the session ended, Ambassador Myrath of the Pharaon approached Daniel. His crystalline form was dim with an emotion Daniel had learned to recognize as sadness. "Are you satisfied, Ambassador Price?" Myrath asked quietly. Daniel considered the question carefully. "No," he said finally. "Satisfaction would have been serving as true equals. This is just necessity. You forced us to choose between being victims and being victors. We chose survival." "At what cost, though?" Myrath pressed. "You have become what you fought against. You have become the dominant power that limits others." "We limit no one," Daniel corrected. "We simply refuse to be limited ourselves. Any species can grow as strong as they want. They can explore, expand, build fleets. We will not stop them. The difference is that we will also defend ourselves if they become a threat, and we will not apologize for it." "Is that not what we tried to do?" Myrath asked. "Defend ourselves against what we saw as a threat?" Daniel looked at the Pharaon ambassador for a long moment. "The difference, Myrath, is that we were never actually a threat to you. We fought beside you. We bled for you. We asked only to be treated as equals. You let fear and prejudice convince you that strength equals danger. You learned the hard way that removing your strongest defender makes you vulnerable." He turned to walk away, then paused. "But here is what really matters. We came back. When you needed us, despite everything you did to us, we came back and saved you. Not because we had to, not because you deserved it, but because we chose to. That is the difference between us and you. We do not abandon our principles just because someone has wronged us." Myrath had no response to that. Daniel walked away, leaving the ambassador to think about the lessons learned at such a terrible cost. In the weeks that followed, the new order took shape. Human colonies spread across hundreds of systems. Human trade ships carried goods throughout the galaxy. Human patrol fleets kept the peace in regions that had once been lawless. Some species resented the change. They muttered about human imperialism and human arrogance. But they kept those mutterings quiet because they knew the alternative. Without human protection, they would fall to the Krelnoth or some other threat. Other species adapted quickly. They saw opportunity in the new order. They formed partnerships with human companies, established trade agreements, and even began adopting some human technologies and ideas. And Earth, the planet that had once begged to join the galactic community, now sat at the center of that community, not through force but through necessity. The galaxy needed humanity more than humanity needed the galaxy. President Helen Carter, near the end of her term, stood once more looking at the stars from her office window. Gregory Mills, her loyal chief of staff, stood beside her. "Was it worth it?" Gregory asked quietly. "All the struggle, all the pain?" Helen thought about the question. She thought about the colonists who had died during the Krelnoth attacks. She thought about the years of bitter isolation. She thought about the price humanity had paid for the Council's fear. "Ask me in 100 years, she finally said, "when we see what grows from the seeds we have planted, when we see if we used our power wisely or became the very thing we despised." She smiled slightly. "But I think we will be okay. We are human after all. We survived the Ice Age. We survived world wars. We survived ourselves. We can survive success too." Gregory nodded, understanding. The future was uncertain, but it was a future humanity had claimed for itself. No one would ever again try to limit human potential out of fear. The humans had left the Council silently when they were cast out, but they had returned to something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that would not be denied, would not be limited, and would not forget the lessons learned from betrayal. And the galaxy would never be the same. The attack came without any warning at all. The Vrelt mining colony on Theta 7 was having a normal day. Workers were pulling valuable minerals from the asteroid field. Families were going about their daily lives. Children were in school. Nobody expected what was about to happen. Then the sensors picked up something wrong. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Dozens of them. But these were not human ships or council ships. They were Krelnoth vessels, a hostile alien race from beyond council space. The Krelnoth had been quiet for decades. Everyone thought they had given up raiding. Everyone was wrong. The colony's emergency signal reached the council within minutes. High Arbiter Zixthor sat up straight in alarm when he heard the news. He immediately activated the emergency defense protocol, the system that had protected council space for generations. Nothing happened. "Where is the third fleet?" Zixthor demanded, his reptilian face showing confusion and fear. "They're supposed to respond to emergencies like this." His assistant, a young Pharaon named Silex, checked the displays. The light inside his crystalline body dimmed with horror as he understood the problem. "The third fleet was mostly human ships, High Arbiter. They are gone. We removed them 6 months ago. Then send the 7th fleet. The 7th fleet also had mostly human ships, sir. The 9th fleet has Korvashi vessels, but they are 3 days away at their fastest speed. The colony will be destroyed by then." Zixthor felt ice run through his veins. His claws gripped the arms of his chair. "How many of our fleets depended on human ships?" Silex's light grew even dimmer, which was the Pharaon way of looking terrified. 17 out of 23 fleets, High Arbiter. We never built our own ships because the humans always provided them. The mining colony on Theta 7 fell in just 4 hours. 3,000 Vrelt civilians died. The mining equipment was destroyed. It was the worst disaster in Council history, and it was only the beginning. Over the next month, 6 more colonies came under attack. The Krelnoth had been watching, waiting. When they saw the Council's defenses were weak, they struck like predators going after wounded prey. The Council's remaining fleets tried to respond, but they were too slow, too scattered, and far too few. In the Council chamber, the atmosphere was thick with fear and anger and blame. "This is your fault," Ambassador Threll screeched at Zixthor, his mandibles clicking with rage. "You pushed for the human restriction. You wanted them gone." "We all voted for it," Ambassador Myrath said quietly, his crystal form dim with shame. "We all share this burden. Every one of us is responsible." "Then let us contact the humans," suggested Ambassador Krell, her energy form pulsing hopefully. "Surely they can see we need their help. They are not monsters. They will not let innocent people die." Zixthor straightened in his seat. Pride fought with desperation inside him. Finally, desperation won. "Send a diplomatic ship to Earth, request military assistance. Be humble about it." The diplomatic ship arrived at Earth 3 days later. Ambassador Felix, a Korvashi known for his skill in negotiation, approached Earth's orbital stations. What he saw made him stop in confusion. The stations were massive, far bigger than Council intelligence had reported, and there were so many of them. Each one covered with weapons that made Council technology look like children's toys. "This is Ambassador Felix of the Galactic Council," he transmitted. "I request an audience with Earth's government on a matter of great urgency." The response did not come from Earth. It came from Luna, Earth's moon, where a huge new complex had been built. "Ambassador Felix." "This is Director Patricia Lewis," a human voice replied. "Your request is noted. However, Earth is no longer bound by Council diplomatic protocols. If you wish to speak with us, you will land at the coordinates we provide. You will submit to our security procedures. These are non-negotiable terms." Felix felt shock run through his energy form. This was a complete reversal. Humans used to follow Council protocols. Now they were demanding the Council follow human rules. But he had no choice. The colonies were dying. He was brought to a conference room deep inside the lunar facility. President Helen Carter sat at the head of a long table. Military officers and civilian advisors surrounded her. Her face was polite but cold, like she was meeting with strangers rather than former allies. "Madam President," Felix began, his energy form pulsing with desperate appeal. "The Council faces a crisis unlike any in our history. The Krelnoth are attacking our colonies. Thousands are dead. Thousands more are in danger. We need your help. We need your fleet." "The same fleet you forced us to dismantle?" Helen asked, cutting him off. "We made a mistake," Felix admitted. The words hurt to say, but they were true. We see that now. But innocent people are dying. Children are dying. Helen was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was as cold as ice. Where was your concern for innocent lives when you voted to leave humanity defenseless? Where was this wisdom when you decided we were too dangerous to trust? We were wrong, Felix said, and he meant it. Please, I'm begging you. Help us, Helen stood up. Everyone else at the table stood with her. The answer is no, Ambassador. Humanity is no longer responsible for Council security. We have our own people to protect now, our own interests to serve. You would leave us to die? Felix could not believe what he was hearing. We would leave you to face the consequences of your own actions. Helen corrected him. Just as you left us to face ours when you cast us out. Good day, Ambassador. My security team will escort you back to your ship. Felix was led out of the room. He felt numb, unable to process what had just happened. As his ship left Earth's orbit, he looked at his sensors and saw something that made his energy form pulse with fear. There was a massive fleet in Earth's space. Hundreds of ships, all of them human designs, all of them armed with weapons he could not identify. The fleet was easily 5 times larger than anything the Council could assemble. Humanity had built an armada in secret, and they had no intention of sharing it with the Council. When Felix reported back to the Council, there was chaos. Some wanted to declare war on humanity. Others wanted to beg more desperately. A few, like Myrath, simply sat in stunned silence. We did this to ourselves, Myrath finally said. We had the galaxy's most powerful military as our ally. They asked nothing from us but respect and equality. We gave them neither. Now we pay the price. There must be something we can do, Threll said, though he sounded defeated. There is, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Ambassador Krell at the chamber entrance. Behind her were representatives from 12 other species, all of them looking grim. We can surrender, Krell said bluntly. We can admit we were wrong. We can beg humanity to save us, and we can give them whatever they ask for in return. That would mean giving up our sovereignty. Zixthor protested weakly. We are losing that anyway. Krell replied. The Krellnoth will not stop until we are all dead or enslaved. At least with the humans we have a chance to survive. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew she was right. They had backed themselves into a corner, and there was only one way out. On Earth, Admiral Christopher Blake watched the surveillance reports from Council space. The Krellnoth were pushing deeper into their territory every day. Council fleets were being destroyed or forced to retreat. It would not be long before entire species started going extinct. Should we help them? Asked Captain Andrew Hayes, who had been promoted to Blake's second-in-command. Blake was quiet for a moment. Not yet. Let them understand the full weight of their mistake. Let them realize that their pride and fear almost destroyed them. When they are truly desperate, when they are ready to accept any terms we offer, then we will act. And what terms will those be? Blake smiled slightly. The same terms they should have given us from the start. Equality, respect, and the understanding that humanity will never again allow itself to be limited by the fears of others. Hayes nodded slowly. They are not going to like it. They do not have to like it, Blake replied. They just have to accept it, because the alternative is extinction. In space, the Krellnoth continued their advance, and the Council continued to fall apart, their great alliance crumbling under the weight of their own mistakes. The humans watched and waited, ready to save those who had betrayed them, but only on humanity's terms. 6 months had passed since humanity left the Council's military structure. In the Great Council chamber, Ambassador Threll of the Vrelt Collective stood before the other members with growing worry on his insect-like face. We have lost all contact with our mining colony on Theta 7, he announced, his mandibles clicking nervously. The last message we received mentioned human ships in the area, but the colonists said these ships looked different. They were not the designs we know. High Arbiter Zixthor leaned forward in his seat, his reptilian eyes narrowed. Different how? Larger, much more advanced. Our people tried to contact them, but the humans did not respond. They just scanned the system and jumped away. Threll's voice shook slightly. It was like we were not even worth talking to. A worried murmur spread through the chamber. Ambassador Myrath of the Farron spoke up, his crystalline body reflecting light in agitated patterns. This is the 5th report like this in 5 weeks. Human ships appearing in unexplored regions, surveying everything and leaving without a word. They are mapping something, or claiming territory, added Ambassador Krell of the Korvashi Union. Her energy form pulsed with concern. Territory we have not even discovered yet. Zixthor's claws tapped against his chair, a sign he was thinking hard. What is the status of Earth's fleet reduction? Did they follow our orders? Threll shifted uncomfortably. That is complicated, High Arbiter. When our inspection teams tried to enter human space, they were turned away. The humans were polite but firm. They cited Article 47 of the Council Charter. The Sovereignty Clause, Myrath said, his voice like distant bells. They have the right to refuse entry to their own territory. We cannot legally force an inspection there, but the agreement clearly stated. Threll began. The agreement was about Council space, Myrath interrupted gently. We told them to reduce their military presence in our space. We never said anything about their own systems. We assumed they would cooperate. The chamber erupted in argument. Voices in dozens of languages filled the air, some angry, some frightened, all confused. Zixthor felt something cold settling in his chest. They had made a terrible mistake. On Earth, in a secure facility buried deep under the mountains of Switzerland, Director Patricia Lewis stood in front of a huge, holographic star map. She was the head of human intelligence, which meant she knew everything happening in human space and beyond. The map was covered in colored dots. Red dots marked exploration ships still working. Blue dots showed systems ready for human colonies. Green dots indicated valuable resources that mining teams had already claimed. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands, spreading out from Earth like roots from a tree. How long until the Council realizes what we are doing? Asked Admiral Christopher Blake. He commanded Earth's new military forces, the ones the Council knew nothing about. They already suspect, Patricia replied calmly. But suspicion is not proof. By the time they confirm what we are doing, it will be far too late to stop us. Blake studied the map with appreciation. We are expanding faster than any species in recorded Council history. We are making up for lost time, Patricia said. 30 years we held ourselves back. 30 years we respected their boundaries and stayed in their little box. Now we are free to do what humans do best, which is? Patricia smiled. It was not a nice smile. Grow, adapt, take what we need. We do not need their permission anymore, Admiral. And we certainly do not need their protection. Far away from both Earth and Council space, Captain Michelle Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the horizon. Her ship was one of the new exploration vessels, built in secret and equipped with technology that would make Council scientists weep with envy. Before her, on the main screen, stretched an uncharted nebula. Colors swirled in patterns that seemed impossible, beautiful and strange at the same time. Sensors detect a star system inside the nebula, Captain, her science officer reported. 3 planets in the habitable zone, rich in minerals. No signs of intelligent life anywhere in the system. Michelle nodded, making notes on her datapad. Mark it for immediate colonization. Flag it as priority 1 for the mining guild. Continue sweep of this sector. Her crew worked with quiet efficiency. Every person on the horizon understood how important their mission was. They were not just exploring anymore. They were securing humanity's future, 1 star system at a time. And they were doing it without asking anyone for permission. In another part of space, construction continued on humanity's secret shipyards. The one near Jupiter was the largest, hidden in the swirling storms of the gas giant where sensors could not penetrate. Workers in protective suits assembled massive ships, each one bigger than anything the Council had ever seen. Chief Engineer Paul Sanders oversaw the construction of the newest vessel. It was going to be a colony ship, capable of carrying 50,000 people and all the equipment needed to build a new world from scratch. How many of these are we building? Asked his assistant, a young woman named Rachel Moore. 20 in this shipyard alone, Paul answered. Another 30 in the Saturn facility, and more in the asteroid belt. Rachel's eyes went wide. That is enough to move millions of people. That is the idea, Paul said. Every human who wants a new start, a new world, will get one. No more waiting for Council approval. No more being told we cannot expand because it makes the aliens nervous. Do you think they will try to stop us? Paul laughed, but it was a bitter sound. They can try. But by the time they figure out what we are doing, we will have people on 100 worlds. You cannot stop a colony once it is established. You would have to fight a war, and the Council does not have the stomach for that. He was right. The council was built on the idea of peaceful cooperation. They talked and debated and voted. They did not fight wars against their own members. It was supposed to be their strength. It turned out to be their weakness. Back on Earth, President Helen Carter met with the governors of all human colonies. They gathered in a secure conference room, their faces appearing on screens from a dozen different worlds. "Ladies and gentlemen," Helen began, "I want to give you an update on Operation Expansion." That was the official name for humanity's secret growth plan. Only a few people knew about it, and everyone in this room was sworn to secrecy. "In the past 6 months, we have surveyed over 200 star systems," Helen continued. "Of those, 87 are suitable for colonization. We have already begun moving people to 12 of them. The council knows nothing about any of this." "How long can we keep it secret?" asked Governor Frank Peters of the Mars colony. "Not much longer," Helen admitted. "Maybe another few months, but by then, we will have too many colonies for them to do anything about it. They cannot make us give up worlds where people already live." "What about trade?" asked Governor Linda Shaw from the Europa settlement. "We still need council resources, at least for now." "We are working on that," Helen assured her. "Our mining operations in unclaimed space are already producing more than we need. In a year, maybe less, we will be completely self-sufficient. We will not need anything from the council." "And then?" asked Governor Peters. Helen's expression turned hard. "And then we see how they like being the ones who need something from us." The meeting continued for hours, going over details and logistics. But the message was clear. Humanity was done playing by rules written by others. They were done being told what they could and could not do. They were free now, whether the council liked it or not. On the far edge of known space, a human scout ship detected something interesting. It was a derelict station, abandoned long ago by some species that had either died out or moved on. The station was huge, easily the size of a small moon. Commander Jake Peterson led a team to investigate. What they found inside made him immediately contact Earth. "You need to see this," he said to Admiral Blake over the secure channel. "It is a manufacturing facility. Ancient. But the technology is more advanced than anything the Council has. If we can get it working, do it," Blake ordered immediately. "Get our best engineers there. I want that station operational." "Yes, sir. But Admiral, there is something else. The station's logs mention other facilities like this one. Dozens of them, scattered across the galaxy. If we can find them all," Blake understood immediately, "we would have technology that makes us the most advanced species in known space." "Yes, sir. Find them," Blake said. "Find them all. And, Commander, the Council does not need to know about this." "Understood, sir." The conversation ended and Blake sat back in his chair. He looked at the star charts on his wall, at all the systems humanity was quietly claiming. The Council had tried to limit humanity to keep themselves safe. Instead, they had set humanity free to become something greater than the Council had ever imagined, and there was nothing they could do to stop it now. Captain Andrew Hayes stood on the bridge of his ship, the Valiant. Through the main view screen, he could see the rest of the human fleet gathering for the last time in Council space. 27 ships floated in the darkness like a constellation. There were massive carriers, medium cruisers, and small, fast frigates. All of them bore the insignia of the Earth Defense Force. "All ships report ready for jump, Captain," said Lieutenant Karen White from her station. She was his tactical officer and had served with him for 8 years. Andrew stared at Council Station Alpha in the distance. Its lights twinkled like jewels against the black of space. 30 years ago, humanity had first arrived at that station. They had been so hopeful then, so eager to join the galactic community. The Council had welcomed them with open arms and pretty words about unity and cooperation. What a lie that had turned out to be. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the station," Karen said, breaking into his thoughts. "It is from the Pharaon ambassador." "Put it through." The screen changed to show Ambassador Myrath. He was a Pharaon, which meant he looked like he was made of living crystal. Light moved through his body in patterns that showed his emotions if you knew how to read them. "Captain Hayes," Myrath said, his voice sounding like wind chimes. "I wanted to speak with you before you left. I opposed this decision. Many of us did. But we were outvoted." "I know you did, Ambassador," Andrew said, and he meant it. Myrath had always been fair to humans. But opposition without action is just empty words. Myrath's light dimmed, which meant he was sad or ashamed. Where will you go? Home, Andrew answered simply. Back to Earth, back to human space. And after that? Andrew smiled, but there was no humor in it. That is not your concern anymore, Ambassador. You made your choice. Now we will make ours. He ended the transmission before Myrath could say anything else. Andrew turned to face his crew. These were good people. They had served with honor. They had earned the respect of aliens who now threw them away like garbage. Navigation. Set course for the Sol system, he ordered. All ships prepare to jump on my mark. The fleet moved together perfectly. They had practiced these maneuvers for years, working alongside Council forces. Now those same forces were probably happy to see them go. Mark. One by one, the human ships opened wormholes and disappeared. They left without ceremony, without speeches, without looking back. The Council wanted them gone, so they were gone. Back on Earth, President Helen Carter sat in her office with her entire cabinet. Gregory Mills, her chief of staff, had just finished reading the fleet status report. They actually did it, Gregory said quietly. The Council really voted us out. Helen nodded, her fingers drumming on the desk. She did that when she was thinking hard about something. Get me, everyone. The Secretary of Defense, the heads of all intelligence agencies, the colony governors, everyone. What are you planning, Madam President? Helen looked out the window at the stars. For 30 years, we have been good little members of the Council. We followed their rules. We limited how many colonies we could build. We shared our technology. We fought their wars. And what did we get for it? Betrayal, Gregory said. Exactly, Helen replied. So now we stop being good little members. We stop asking for permission. We stop limiting ourselves to make them comfortable. What does that mean specifically? Helen smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It means we remind the galaxy why humans survived everything Earth threw at us. It means we show them what we can really do when we stop holding back. Over the next few weeks, orders went out across all of human space. They were quiet orders, sent through secure channels that the Council could not monitor. Construction began on new shipyards hidden in asteroid fields and nebulas. Scientists started working on projects that had been shelved because the Council thought they were too aggressive. Colony ships were built in secret, ready to jump to systems far beyond Council space. Captain Michelle Rodriguez received her orders while she was docked at Mars Station. She was being given command of a new ship, the Horizon. It was unlike anything humans had built before. Bigger, faster, with weapons that made Council technology look like toys. You want me to do what? She asked Admiral Christopher Blake, who had delivered the orders personally. Explore, Blake said simply. Go beyond Council space. Find habitable worlds. Find resources. Mark everything for future colonization. Without asking the Council? The Council does not own the galaxy, Blake replied. They only own what they have claimed. There are millions of stars out there that no one has touched. We are going to claim them first. Michelle looked at the star charts he had given her. They showed regions of space that were completely unexplored. This will take years. Then you better get started, Blake said with a slight smile. The Horizon left Mars 3 days later, along with 20 other exploration ships. Each one headed in a different direction, spreading out like seeds on the wind. Their mission was simple: find everything the Council had not found yet, and claim it for humanity. At the same time, on the far side of human space, construction crews worked around the clock on something massive. It was a shipyard, but not like any that had existed before. It floated in the shadow of a gas giant, hidden from casual scans. Inside, new ships were being built. Lots of them. Director Patricia Lewis of Human Intelligence watched the construction from her office on Europa. She was in charge of making sure the Council did not find out what humanity was doing until it was too late. How long until they notice? Asked Admiral Blake, who had come to check on progress. They already suspect something, Patricia answered. But suspecting and knowing are two different things. By the time they figure out what we are doing, we will have claimed 50 new systems. 50? Blake looked impressed. The projection said 30. We are moving faster than projected, Patricia said. Turns out that when you are not wasting time asking for permission, you can get a lot done. She pulled up a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots showed where human exploration ships were working. Blue dots showed systems that were ready for colonization. Green dots showed resource-rich asteroids and planets that mining crews had already started working on. There were hundreds of dots, spreading out from human space like a web. "This is incredible," Blake said quietly. "This is necessary," Patricia corrected. "The Council tried to limit us to keep us small and controllable. They forced us to choose between staying weak and taking what we need to survive. And we chose survival. We always choose survival," Patricia said. "That is what makes us human." Back in Council space, some aliens were starting to notice that something was wrong. Trade ships reported seeing human vessels in places they should not be. Colonies near human space mentioned strange ships passing through. Ships that looked human but were not any design the Council had on file. But when the Council sent messages to Earth asking about these reports, they received polite but unhelpful responses. Yes, humans were exploring. Yes, they were building new ships. No, they were not violating any Council laws. Everything they were doing was in unclaimed space or in their own territory. The Council had no legal ground to complain. They had kicked humanity out of their military structure. They had restricted human activities in Council space, but they had not thought to restrict what humans did in their own space or in the vast unclaimed regions of the galaxy. It was a mistake they would come to regret. Daniel Price stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. The room was enormous, built from crystal that caught the light and threw rainbow colors everywhere. But today it felt cold and empty, despite being filled with representatives from 47 different alien species. He had been Earth's ambassador for 6 years now. 6 years of meetings, debates, and careful diplomacy. 6 years of building relationships with beings who looked nothing like humans. Some had scales, others had fur. Some were made of energy, and some looked like giant insects. But they were supposed to be allies. They were supposed to be friends. Today, Daniel learned how wrong he had been. The High Arbiter, a tall reptilian creature named Zixthor, raised his clawed hand for silence. The room became quiet instantly. Everyone knew what was coming. The vote had been cast and humanity had lost. "The motion passes," Zixthor announced, his voice echoing off the crystal walls. "Humanity is now restricted from all military operations within Council space. Your fleet must be taken apart. Earth's weapons must be reduced to only what is needed to protect your home planet." Daniel felt his stomach drop, but he kept his face calm. Next to him, Commander Lisa Grant gripped her datapad so hard her knuckles turned white. They had fought against this decision for 6 months. They had presented evidence, given speeches, and pleaded their case. None of it had mattered. The Vrelt ambassador, an insect-like creature with clicking mandibles, made a sound that Daniel had learned was their version of laughter. The Korvashi representative, a being of pure energy held in a special container, pulsed with what looked like satisfaction. Even the Pharaon, who usually stayed neutral in everything, had voted against humanity. Daniel looked around the room slowly. Some aliens would not meet his eyes. Others stared at him with clear dislike. A very few looked sorry, but not sorry enough to have voted differently. "This is a mistake," Daniel said quietly, but his voice carried across the entire hall. "We have fought beside you for 30 years. We have bled for this council. We have died protecting species in this room. And that is the problem," replied the Vrelt ambassador, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "Your species has become too powerful. You are aggressive. You are unpredictable. We are doing this to keep the galaxy safe." Daniel wanted to laugh, but he knew it would do no good. Safe from what? From humans who had only ever helped them? From the species that had rushed to their aid every single time there was trouble? "When do we start?" Lisa asked, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Right now," Zixthor answered. "Your ships have 72 hours to leave Council military zones. The dismantling of your fleet will begin in 1 week." Daniel nodded slowly. He gathered his papers, taking his time with each one. Lisa did the same. They had practiced staying calm even when they were furious, and that practice paid off now. As they walked toward the door, Daniel stopped for just a moment. "History will remember this day," he said without turning around. "I hope you can live with what happens next." The heavy doors closed behind them with a sound that seemed far too final. Outside the chamber, Lisa finally let her anger show. 30 years, she said, her voice shaking. 30 years we have been part of this council. We saved the Korvashi from the border wars. We helped the Pharaon rebuild after their sun crisis. We have given them technology, resources, and lives. And this is how they repay us? Daniel put a hand on her shoulder. They are scared, Lisa. We grew too fast, became too strong. They looked at us and saw something they could not control, so they tried to chain us down. What do we do now? Daniel looked out the window at the stars beyond. Earth was out there somewhere, along with the dozen colony worlds humanity had built in council space. Good people, hard-working people who had believed in the dream of a united galaxy. We go home, he said quietly. We tell Earth what happened here, and then we let the politicians decide our next move. They will be furious. They should be, Daniel replied. But being furious and being stupid are two different things. We need to be smart about this. The journey back to Earth took 3 days. Daniel spent most of that time writing his report, choosing each word carefully. This document would shape humanity's response to the greatest insult they had ever received from the galactic community. When they finally arrived at Earth, Daniel was immediately taken to meet with President Helen Carter. She sat behind her desk in the Oval Office, her face calm but her eyes sharp. Her chief of staff, Gregory Mills, stood nearby. They really did it, Gregory said, shaking his head in disbelief. After everything we have done for them. They did, Daniel confirmed. And they did it with a smile on their faces. Helen was quiet for a long moment, staring at the report Daniel had given her. What is your recommendation, Ambassador? Daniel had thought about this question for 3 days straight. We comply, he said. We pull our ships back. We dismantle our fleet as ordered. Gregory looked shocked. You cannot be serious. We should fight this. And prove them right? Daniel asked. No, we do exactly what they ask. We follow every rule, every guideline, every restriction they place on us. I do not understand, Helen said slowly. Daniel leaned forward. They have given us something precious, Madam President. They have given us freedom. For 30 years we have played by their rules. We have limited our expansion to stay within their comfort zone. We have shared our technology when we could have kept it. We have fought their wars and died for their causes. He paused, letting his words sink in. But they just cut us loose. They have no claim on us anymore. No right to tell us what to do in our own space. We can finally stop asking for their permission and start doing what humans do best. Which is? Helen asked, though Daniel could see she already understood. Survive, Daniel said simply. Adapt. Grow. We have been holding back for 30 years, trying not to scare them. Well, they are already scared, so now we stop holding back. Helen was silent for a moment, then she nodded. Call a meeting with the Joint Chiefs and the colony governors. We have work to do. As Daniel left the Oval Office, he looked up at the night sky through the window. The stars were waiting out there. Billions of them, with planets and resources and room for humanity to finally spread its wings. The Council thought they were protecting themselves by pushing humanity away. Daniel almost felt sorry for them. They had no idea what they had just unleashed.